This video will accompany Chapter 9, Clinical Service Delivery. I think just to start off, I think it's important to understand that clinicians will be providing intervention and services on a continuum of service delivery models. There are lots of options and ways to serve our clients, and so that continuum will be just as wide as those clients in terms of age and disabilities. And we will need to accommodate those differences as we talk about our service delivery models. Some service delivery models that you might have along that continuum are, of course, direct service versus indirect, directly working with a client, or indirect working with someone who's involved with it, whether it's a classroom teacher, a nurse, a family member, whatever it might be. We also have clinical versus consultative. Clinical being where you maybe work one-on-one in a separate setting, versus consultative where you might consult with the family member, consult with the nurse, consult with the CNA, those types of situations. We also have individual versus group. So of course we can have the individual one-on-one that we're most familiar with maybe. We also have small groups. Small groups can be with children. You can have small groups with adults for aphasia groups, those types of things. And then you also can do more community groups where you take both adults and students out into the community and provide that continuum of services in the community. So I think it's important to remember that we have a continuum of services and we need to be flexible to move our clients or to meet their needs anywhere along that continuum. I think we have to remember that just because we do individual and then we move to a group, that doesn't mean we can't move back to individual. Depending upon the client's needs, depending upon where they're at, we need to be flexible. So just because you're out in the community doesn't mean you might have to move back to a group setting or an individual. So remember that continuum of service delivery models is a continuum. And just because you reach one point on it does not mean you can't go back and forth. So just remember it's a continuum. You haven't reached a point that you cannot go back or forward in any of that continuum of intervention. So remember that. The next thing this chapter talks about is kind of the exciting part about being a speech-language pathologist, and that is the variety of settings that speech-language pathologists can work in. So of course, schools or education is one of those settings, and in that setting you can work from birth through 21. You can work with early intervention, you can work with families, you can work with Head Starts, you can work with preschools. And also you work in schools, you work with resource teachers, you work with classroom teachers. And so lots of opportunities for working in the schools. So that's one option that of a setting for an SLP. The medical work settings are also another option. Most primary medical SLPs work in hospitals, rehab centers, skilled nursing facilities. That doesn't mean you can't work in specialty hospitals. You can also work in outpatient clinics. You can also work in home health and provide home health settings for a medical SLP. The other work settings is you can certainly do a private practice and do both of those. You don't have to have a private practice. You can also be a school speech pathologist and a clinical speech pathologist or a medical speech pathologist. I did both of those for a while, so it's not exclusive of each other. You can also have roles in colleges and universities, group homes, prisons, psychiatric centers, lots of different options for work settings for speech-language pathologists. So I think that variety is certainly appealing to our profession. Always remember that just because you start out in medical doesn't mean you can't move to schools and vice versa. You can do them at the same time, simultaneously. Lots of different options that you can do as a speech-language pathologist. The other thing I just want to conclude with is that there are lots of opportunities for speech language pathologists to match your own personal interests and style to a particular work setting. And so, as a speech language pathologist, you can find that niche, you can find what matches. Your personal style and work setting, and if you like a lot of different things, then you can do a lot of variety as well.